talk about measures of financial risk, portfolio theory and value at risk. In this topic we are going to learn about mean variance framework and value at risk. Mean variance framework. The traditional mean variance model estimates the amount of financial risk of portfolio in terms of portfolio expected return and risk, that is standard deviations or variance. So for measuring the financial risk there are many models. Okay, the one of the framework which is used is mean variance framework, in which for measuring the risk we use two terms, that is expected return, that is a mean, and standard deviation or variance, which is a risk. Okay, based on these two terms we will understand what is the risk of a particular portfolio or a particular security. Okay, so assume that the return distribution is elliptical. Okay, in this framework we will assume that the return distribution is elliptical in the sense, if you see this shape is known as the elliptical shape, and it is assumed that here no it is assumed that here it is 0 and here it is 1, here it is 2, minus 1 minus 2, 1 2. So it is assumed to take this shape, and it is also assumed that this area contains 66.7% of the whole values, and this total area, which consists of this and this, consists of about 95% of the total values. Okay, when we distribute this in a graph, when we take the mean and SD of a particular portfolio or a particular return in several days, and we distribute it in a graph, this is the loss side and this is the positive side. Okay, so while distributing it like this area consists of up to 1 minus 1 to 1 consists of 66.7 values, means all the losses profit will be towards the mean. That is what this return distribution, elliptical return distribution, assumes. So in a mean variance framework they assume that these distributions are elliptical, means 95% of all the returns, all the losses, profit, etc. comes within minus 2 to 2. That is what normal distribution suggests, and that is what is used in mean variance framework. So for calculating mean and SD, as you know, there are two formulas. For mean it is weighted mean, just summation of weighted means, and for standard deviation it is root of weight 1 square sigma square. Sigma is the return standard deviation, security standard deviation. So sigma weight 2 square sigma 2 square to weight 1 weight 2 sigma 1 sigma 2 rho. Rho or R is the coefficient of correlation, because if you take two securities, these two securities can be correlated, the movement of which can be positive or negative, but the correlation should also be considered while taking the standard deviation, because if one security goes up, if the other go down, correlation is said to be negative, and there is a specific degree. So this degree is denoted by rho or R. So for portfolio only the same, only summation of W1 W2, which is being shown here, and portfolio standard deviation also is being done like this, but there is a certain difference. W1 W2, then you will take W1 and W3, then W2 and W3 if we have three securities in a portfolio. So the securities are taken in that manner, so that we get the portfolio standard deviation. If the return standard deviation distribution is symmetrical, then the standard deviation is appropriate measure of financial risk when determining the probability that are undesirable outcome will occur. So by using the standard deviation and normal distribution table, we can measure the financial risk. So we are more concerned with this downside risk because we are hours of losses and profit we may not be very eager. So this downside risk is measured by the portfolio manager. So if you plot risk and expected return in a graph, you'll get a graph like this in a portfolio where in a market where there is no risk-free return. If you see, as the risk increases, return also increases, not in a proportionate manner due to the presence of non-presence of a risk-free return. So if the investor is more risk averse, he or she may choose portfolio on the efficient portfolio closer to portfolio A. Since here risk is less as compared to the risk is less, will be a person who is risk averse will be taking something around this graphs here, something around here. So nobody will be taking C because for the same risk they'll be getting a higher return. So nobody will be taking C. So every investor wants to be in efficient frontier only. So this type of efficient frontier is available in a market where there is no risk-free return. And if there is a risk-free return, the efficient frontier will look like this, a straight line. Since whenever the risk increases by a certain percentage, there should be an increase in return. So that is what the change that will come when a risk-free return is added to the market. So the optimum set of portfolio now lie in a straight line, and that runs from risk-free security through the market portfolio M. If the risk-free securities is added to the market. Okay, so to achieve points on the line right of the market, an investor who is aggressive will borrow money at risk-free rate and invest in more of market portfolios to achieve a point somewhere around here. So what they'll do is they'll buy borrow money at risk-free rate and invest so that they get a higher return and make something over here. Limitations of mean variance framework. The assumption that the mean and standard deviation are all that matters in regard of portfolio. See, if the mean variance framework assumes expected return, that is mean and standard deviation, which is a risk, are everything in that matters in regard to the portfolio, which is not correct. There are other factors, coefficient, correlation, etc., that matters, and also other market factors which matters in terms of portfolio. So this assumption is not primarily correct, but mean variance framework takes this assumption into account. All investors are assumed to be able to borrow at risk-free rate of interest, which is also not true. In real life scenario, it is like major banks, etc., can only borrow at risk-free rate of interest, not all the investors. In the mean, standard deviation and correlation between investment return are assumed to be consistent from the perspective of all investments. Okay, so in market usually what happens is a certain level of investors have access to a different risk and return investments, which the lower class will not be able to access. Some people with higher bargaining power, some investors with higher bargaining power can get a better return at a lower risk, and other investors cannot. So this assumption is against that, and for mean variance framework, the assumption is that every investor will have same returns and same risk, which is not proper. The use of standard deviation as a risk measure is not appropriate for non-normal distribution. Consider a distribution which is not normal, like a skewed distribution, which is this right. This is a normal distribution which is shown in black. The other color is a positively skewed distribution. So in this distribution, this positively skewed distribution, this standard deviation being a risk measure is not appropriate. So for this distribution, the cumulative probability of area under the normal distribution, then the black distribution, to a specific value s can be found out using the formula z is equal to x minus mu divided by sigma, that is standard deviation. So it is suppose we have to find out a value of x2 and the mean 3 and the standard deviation is x, so it will come around 0.1667. In the PD table, probability distribution table of normal distribution, if you see, it is showing 43.4%, which means the cumulative probability that the value will be 2 or below is equal to 43.4 percentage only. So that is the meaning of that. And if the density function is not symmetrical like this, if it is not symmetrical, the ST cannot capture appropriate probability of obtaining undesirable or obtaining undesirable return outcome. So standard at this type of skewed probability distribution, the ST standard deviation cannot give the actual appropriate result, which is set in this point. For risky financial asset like equities, distribution tend to have fatter tails and be more peak than normal distribution. If you see, fat tails is one concept, one separate concept, in which what happens is it doesn't end like this, it will go like this, so that the ends are flatter, because financial assets like equities will be having that type of distributions. So the mean variance framework is unreliable when the assumption of normalities is not met. See, if only if this graph comes to be true, this black graph comes to be true, that is a normal distribution gap comes to be true, mean variance framework will work. Otherwise, mean variance framework will not work. Um, in this point, if risky financial assets like equities and distribution tend to fatter tails and be peaked than the normal distribution, it implies that the extreme events are more likely than we expect it to be. See, if it is fatter over here, this means the extreme events are more likely to occur than we expect it to be in a normal distribution curve. So in that case also mean variance framework fails. So these are the circumstances in which the mean variance framework fails. Value at risk or VAR is one of the most important risk measures that we use in day-to-day finance life. And VAR is, let's take a moment. So VAR is interpreted as the worst possible loss under normal circumstances over a specific period. This is an estimate of maximum loss that can occur with a given confidence level. If you see the VAR, say a VAR is 1 million at 95% confidence level, which means under normal condition 95% of the month we can expect that to find either to earn a profit or loss no more than 1 million. That is the meaning of VAR. It estimates under normal condition what might be the loss or profit, but what is the maximum loss that can occur. Okay, so that delta model of VAR can be computed by following expression, that is mu minus z into the standard deviation into the asset value, that is the instrument value or the security value. So mu is mean, z is the whatever corresponds to the arbitrary level of confidence that we have. If we have 95% confidence level of VAR, it is in normal distribution table, it gives 1.65. So Z corresponds to that 1.65, which will be different for different confidence level. And this one is standard deviation, and this is the mean, which multiplied by the asset value will give a delta normal VAR. There are different three methods of computing VAR, which will be discussed later, but this is how we compute the delta normal VAR, which is a very basic VAR computation. So there are certain limitations which are associated with VAR that we need to address here. So one of the major limitation is two arbitrary parameters. One is this 95%. Why we are taking arbitrary means why we are taking, we have no idea. We can take 80 also. Why we are taking 99? We are usually in VAR we take 90, 95, 99% of confidence level. Why we are taking, we don't know. The another is the holding period. So in VAR we usually compute holding period of 250 days or 1 week, 7 days, etc. 250 days is considered as 1 year. So why we are taking that as a holding period is also an arbitrary thing, and we don't know how it is being taken. And usually the practice is to take 250 days, 10 days horizon, etc. That will be learned in further classes. So VAR will increase as the holding period increases. That is one property of VAR, and VAR increases as confidence level increases. Since the confidence level increase, the amount of losses will increase. That's for sure. At this confidence, our will be expecting a lesser losses, and this confidence will be expecting higher loss. As holding period increases also, this VAR can increase, since for a more period we will be experiencing higher losses, we will be expecting a higher losses. VAR estimates are subject to both model risk and implementation risk. So I'll just explain what is model and what is implementation risk. Model risk is nothing but the risk associated with the errors resulting from incorrect assumption used in model. Okay, so one such model risk, for example, if I can take if T-bills, treasury bills are usually traded within 1 year, so the period of VAR is usually taken as 250 days, which is nothing but 1 year. Working days are considered. So if you consider there is a problem in considering this T-bill inside this VAR computation. So if you can or you cannot consider, that is a matter of debate. But if you consider and if you consider and don't consider, there can be a risk that there can be change in VAR which gives rise to another risk, that is a model risk. And implementation risk arises due to error resulting from implementation of the model, so that can happen anywhere. So that is just implementation issues. So it does not tell the investor the amount or magnitude of actual loss. Loss can vary in large. Loss can be very large at times. See, if you see, if you take forward contract trading, when you trade in forward contract, not forward contracts, futures or options, as the case may be, if you take, when you make a profit, it might be very small profit, but when you make a loss, that loss can go up to about 200 300 percentage of whatever profit you have made in a single deal. A loss of a single deal can be very high as compared to a profit of a single deal. That it cannot, the VAR cannot say that this can be the loss. VAR will only say that at this confidence level I expect no more than this loss. So it can be very misleading at times when in such type of trading scenario like forwards, options, etc., when the losses are much more than the profit, the level of profit we expect in a single deal. So VAR measurements might work well with elliptical return distribution such as normal distribution. VAR estimates are unreliable in non-normal distribution. This is a normal distribution. In this type of a distribution, VAR computation can work and give a good understanding of the risk we are taking. But if this uh, graph is a skewed graph, or a positively skewed or a negatively skewed graph, then VAR, this may not, we can find out the VAR, but that is kind of unreliable. That is one of the limitations of VAR. So the limitations in implementing VAR, as we can say, as we have discussed above, can arise due to underlying return distribution, skewed or unskewed, skewed, positively skewed, negatively skewed, or normal distribution, or arbitrary confidence level. Why we are not taking 80, we don't know, we are taking 95, 99 and 90 usually. Then arbitrary holding period will take 1 week, 10-day horizon, 250 days, etc. for holding period, and inability to calculate the magnitude of loss. VAR can only say the max as this confidence level, this is the maximum loss you can suffer. It cannot say how much is the actual loss that we are gonna suffer in a given scenario. That these are the limitations of VAR. Coming to coherent risk measures, these are the four properties of that a portfolio should exhibit, risk properties. So if we consider allow R to be a random event and P rho R to be a risk measure for a random event, then the coherent risk measure should exhibit the following properties. So if you see the monotonicity, it is one of the coherent risk measure. So monotonicity says a portfolio with greater future returns will likely have a less risk. So if you see R1 is greater than R2, that means risk of R1 is less than risk of R2. Since we are very sure that R1 will be giving more returns than R2, then the risk of R1 will be taken lesser than R2. So next one, we'll leave subjectivity to the last. We'll be taking positive homogeneity. Positive homogeneity is like the size of portfolio is proportionate to the impact the size of its risk. Considering that it is a liquid portfolio, if rho of beta into r is equal to beta into rho r, this means the size is directly proportionate to uh, whatever size of risk is directly proportionate to the size of the portfolio, where beta greater than 0. So translation invariance. Translation invariant, the risk of portfolio depend on the asset within the portfolio for all constant representing cash. Okay, if you add cash to a particular portfolio, the risk decreases because cash does not have any risk. So that is being given by this formula. Positively decreases the risk. Subadditivity is a most important property of a coherent risk measure. It says that when you have a 10 portfolio or a 10 investment in a single portfolio, individual risks are contained. There may be some diversification benefits, but in the worst case, no diversification benefits and no greater risk, which means like if a portfolio A has two investments, that is investment A and investment 1 and investment 2, the risk will be investment 1's risk plus investment 2's risk at the most, or investment 1's risk plus investment 2's risk minus certain diversification benefit. It cannot be more than that. It cannot be more than 1 plus 2, the risk of 1 plus 2. That is what the subadditivity, the principle of subadditivity says. So these are all the major properties of coherent risk measures. So we'll be seeing expected shortfall in a short time in the next slide. So before that, we should be thorough with the further properties: monotonicity, subadditivity, positive homogeneity, translation invariance. I'll be saying it one more time. Monotonicity is if R1 is greater than future returns R1 is greater than R2, then R1 is said to be less riskier. Subadditivity, if the risk of individual returns, sum total of risk of individual return is equal to or less than the total return of a portfolio, total risk of the portfolio. Positive homogeneity says that the size of the portfolio is directly proportionate to size of the risk. Translation invariance says that when you add cash to a portfolio, the risk decreases. Expected shortfall. Coming to expected shortfall, it is one other risk measure like VAR that is being used worldwide nowadays. Expected shortfall is expected loss given that the portfolio return already lies below the pre-specified worst quantile return. This worst quantile return is actually the VAR itself. Say the VAR is 1 million. VAR will not say. VAR says that at this confidence level, loss cannot be more than 1 million. But for expected shortfall, it says what it is. Maybe it is 1,020,000. Expected shortfall will say what is the exact value of loss that can happen after this confidence level. So expected shortfall is also known as conditional VAR or expected tail loss, and by definition must exceed VAR. So this is the level. VAR dictates the level at which the worst contact return is there. So expected shortfall should be more than VAR, so as to give away the actual magnitude of VAR. And the formula is given by expected shortfall is equal to mu, which is expected return, plus sigma standard deviation e raised to z square, that is in standard deviation, in standard distribution table, what corresponds to the confidence level that we are taking. 95%, it is 1.65 divided by 2, the whole divided by 1 by x, that is a value that we have to put in into 2 pi. So this has two major advantages as compared to VAR. VAR will not satisfy the property of subadditivity, which is a coherent risk measure, which is a property of a coherent risk measure. So subadditivity means, say there is 3 securities in a portfolio, each of them having a VAR of 1 lakh. So the total VAR of the portfolio should not exceed 3 lakh. But in the case of VAR, it can exceed 3 lakh. So in the case of expected shortfall, it will never exceed 3 lakhs. So it satisfies subadditivity criteria, which is not satisfy VAR as such. So expected shortfall is used in many companies as compared to war, because it gives the magnitude. Secondly, it gives the magnitude and it follows this property of subadditivity. So because it follows subadditivity, one other advantage that we have is it can be plotted in a graph and it shows a convex graph. So that is two advantages over of expected shortfall over war. And the next we'll learn in next slides other advantages. So if you see, these are the other advantages of war which makes it more appropriate risk measure than war. Expected shortfall satisfy all the property of coherent risk measurements, including subadditivity. As I already said in previous slides, war will not satisfy subadditivity at times, but expected shortfall does. The portfolio risk surface for ES is convex because of the property of subadditivity is met. Thus, ES is more appropriate for solving portfolio optimization problems than the VAR method. Okay, so if you have this curve, convex curve, we can solve the optimization problems using the curve, but with VAR method that is not possible since subadditivity is not followed by the VAR. Expected shortfall gives an estimate of magnitude of loss for unfavorable events. VAR provides no estimate of how large the loss may be. That is already been discussed. Expected shortfall has less restrictive assumptions regarding risk, return, and decision rules. This is one of the other arbitrary means other advantage of expected shortfall over VAR. Spectral risk measures. So this is more general risk measure than VAR and ES. So the problem with VAR and ES is that ES gives equal weight for all the losses than a particular quantile. Like if VAR says it is 1 lakh at 95% confidence level, ES will be more than 1 lakh. ES will be giving same weight for all the losses, and VAR will be giving only the weight for this 1 lakh. So weight will be assigned as 1 for 1 lakh, and no other, all the other weights will be, there is no other possibility of coming of any other figure to come. So this is not really a, this not really gives a good picture, since for ES it is said that all losses are given same weight. So this suggests that investors are risk neutral with respect to losses, which is not true. This is contradictory with the common notion that investors are risk averse. In the VAR case, only the loss associated with this p value equal to alpha, which is given by any weight. So which it just means that the VAR value which is given should be equal to a single amount, which can be any amount. Say for a portfolio, VAR is equal to $1 lakh. So that is equal to alpha, and that weight is given 1, and all the other possibilities are discarded. So greater losses are given no weight at all. So this implies that investors are risk seekers. So ES and VAR measures are inadequate in that the weighting function is not consistent with the risk aversion. For tackling this problem, we will have to use some other methods which will be discussed later. One solution of this problem is by assigning weights using this equation: e raised to 1 minus 1 minus the whole into 1 minus rho divided by gamma can be used to proportion weights, with rho representing percentile and gamma representing degree of risk aversion expressed as a constant. Okay, so this equation and things will be discussed later. So now we just have to understand that ES and VAR will assign weight according to their functions. Means if ES assigns the weight of losses as equal after the 5th percentile, and VAR will assign only a 1 value to whatever comes as the VAR result. So which is not a proper way. So that should be addressed by giving appropriate weights. So that will be discussed in later videos. Thank you. So that's all for measurement of financial risk now. So there are a lot of things that we need to learn about VAR, expected shortfall, how to measure it, 3 methods of VAR, what is the importance of VAR, why it is being used, So that will be forming the part of the videos that it to come. So stay tuned and subscribe the channel. Thank you.